welcome to Will and Drew's Gaming Retrospective. You are listening to episode 11 for the week of January 13th, 2019. I am your host, Drew, and I haven't had time to think of a nickname for my co-host, Will.
Happy Thursday, man.
Happy Thursday. Dude, I am all sorts of fucked up right now this week because we go a little behind the scenes for our listeners. We recorded our interview with Vic on Friday.
Fantastic episode.
Really, really enjoyed speaking with him. I think we have a great listen. If you haven't heard it yet, episode 10 with Vortex. It's called Type and Snipe. We talk about one of our best buds and how he grew up with video games from another country. So I think just getting that perspective is worth hearing. But anyway, we recorded on Friday. And then I'm sitting down, I'm editing, and we decided, okay, hey, we're not spending time, on the weekend with our loved ones. Maybe let's try to figure out a way to do this. So we pushed the editing off a little bit, and we end up releasing the show on Wednesday instead of Sunday, which
so weird.
And now, so yesterday this episode went live, and now it's Thursday. We're recording again, and I don't know where we're going to release this. I think that's still kind of up in the air, but like my brain is just, it's all over the place, man. I don't know what the hell I'm doing anymore.
Yeah, it's odd. My routine was always to kind of listen to the show Sunday morning. So I'm going to miss that, but it is what it is. And I think at this rate, we'll be releasing, Mondays at 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah. Every Monday at 3:16 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, stone cold.
There is a wrestling podcast that does that.
Oh, that's cool.
I fucking love it. It's like every X day of the week at 3:16 a.m.
I'm not surprised.
Nobody is up at that hour. Anyway.
No.
Thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to us complain about everything that we do.
Yeah.
We really hope that you're enjoying the podcast. We've been having a great time recording this and interviewing our friends and talking about video games. We've got a lot to talk about today. If you are listening to us for the very first time, thank you so much for downloading the show. Please subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, Google Play Music, or if you have your favorite podcast app like Beyond Pod or Dogcatcher or I don't know what the hell they're called these days, but
Dogcatcher, huh?
Dogcatcher's a real thing, yeah, man. It's a podcast app, and I guess it's pretty good. I don't use it, but there's all kinds of them. Pocket Casts. I mean, you think of it like just add the word pod to another word, and you have a podcast app.
Yeah, except Dogcatcher.
Well, yeah,
that has nothing to do with anything to do with radio shows or podcasts.
Yeah.
But hey.
Maybe I'm thinking, maybe it isn't Dogcatcher. I'm trying to think now. I thought it was.
Look at Firefox. That has nothing to do with the internet.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, subscribe. Find us on your favorite app. Subscribe. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WDGRPodcast. That's WDGRPodcast. We post a few times a week. We try to get some conversation going, conversation flowing, get you guys involved. We want to hear what's on your mind. Will, if somebody wants to follow you, how can they do so?
Will_gear.
And if you'd like to follow me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ScionStorm.
Not poison.
Not poison. So before we get into what we're playing this week, I do want to open up the listener mailbag. We got a message from Patrick at Pucksor. I think I'm saying that right. Him and his leap speak. Patrick, thanks for writing in. He is dead set on getting us to play What Remains of Edith Finch, and apparently Epic is releasing this game for free on their new store. Did you have you downloaded the new Epic store at all? Are you familiar with that whole situation?
I am certainly not, sir.
Yeah. I've been trying to avoid it just because I don't want like another client, but if they're going to be giving away games on a regular basis, I might sign up for it.
Yeah, sign me up.
So What Remains of Edith Finch is the free game right now. I guess they did release Journey for it as well, and of course Fortnite.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Patrick, thanks for writing in. I may download that after all. All right, so now that we've opened up the mailbag and promptly closed it, Will, what are you playing?
Wait, did you check the faxes?
Oh, no. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Beep, boo.
I was waiting for, like, the fax noise.
Oh god, I gotta Google that.
Isn't it like an extended beep followed by like, yeah?
It's only,
I don't know.
it's only coming through my headphones, so you're not even gonna hear it.
That sounded like a cat that was like hissing at something, but like it had a cold and it was hissing.
That's a really good
So it's just like a
description of it.
snotty like hiss.
Yeah. I like it.
I am playing Shadow of the Colossus. And
The remaster, right?
the remaster, yeah. So I believe this game came out last year on PS4. I believe it was just PS4 because it's a Sony exclusive. I believe it's Sony Japan Studio, I think is the dev team or the studio. I don't know a whole lot about the game. I just know that it's, you know, pretty well renowned as being kind of a very unique game.
Yeah.
Where you basically play as what seems to be like a teenage boy who has a horse who he already has like a really strong bond with, and you have a sword that you can use in sunlight to reflect where you need to go.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting. It's very sort of simplistic. I'm still trying to understand the story because I'm really not far into the game. But I will say that one of my first takeaways from it was, or is rather, the horse running animation, which sounds kind of like, I don't know, weird to kind of notice something like that. But you ride the horse in this big open world, and it's like lots of fields and, you know, kind of open setting so far. And you can rotate the camera, so it's kind of one of those games where you can really just kind of, you know, see everything. And I rotated it to like the left or right or whatever, just to kind of get like a side shot of me on this horse, just like galloping throughout, you know, the fields.
Right.
And it's the best horse running animation I've ever seen in a game, like ever.
Really?
And some people might be like, oh, like, who cares about that? But like those little things really like matter to me. And I just get like overly excited about stuff like that. And I just think graphically it's incredible. I like the premise of just kind of like going off into the wild and just finding these colossi, because that's, I guess, what you have to do is just find these like giant like monsters and just kind of climb them and sort of, you know, bring them down. And again, I'm so early in the game that like, as far as I know, that's what the game is about, but I just don't know if there's anything more to it than that. And if that's the case, like, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm okay, like, you know, riding this horse, galloping, you know, through this, like, you know, epic sort of scenic setting and fighting these colossi.
Yeah.
So it's good. I'm really impressed. I'm looking forward to playing more. And in terms of the history of the game, I believe it was released on PS2 first many, many moons ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you go back and play that version, it probably looks like absolute garbage. But, you know,
Well,
that was...
That's kind of what I've come to understand is like the PS2 version was gorgeous for its time, but I think it kind of suffered from some technical things that kept it from running as smoothly as it should. And
from what I understand, yes.
I don't know too much about the history of the game, admittedly, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, apparently it does have a history with some like technical issues, as well as just kind of like, you know, certain things like riding the horse and like the horse controls are kind of like wonky still. Like even in this version, I can just tell that like maybe that's one thing they couldn't really like adjust.
Well, from what I'm reading, they kept everything gameplay wise the same, although it does say here that they introduced a new control scheme, so I'm a little confused on that. But they made all the game's assets brand new from the ground up. Okay. So I guess visually it's a new game, but perhaps, you know, code-wise it's still the same.
Yeah, perhaps.
You know, and just running on more powerful hardware at this point.
Yeah. And you can tell that, like, I think it's Blue Point Games that was the studio that kind of, you know, up-resed it, and they specialize in basically HD remasters and remakes. And they brushed up the Metal Gear Solid HD collection, which I highly recommend to anybody. They were the kind of, you know, genius minds behind that HD remake, and it definitely shows. Like, they really touch up games like very nicely, and I believe they're kind of like one of those studios that's really sought after when it comes to that field.
I'm looking at their credits now, and actually they did Ico and Shadow of the Colossus on the PlayStation 3 as well.
Yes,
because they did like a re-release there.
Exactly, and that kind of touches up on, going back to the history of this game. I believe it's in this order. So it's PS2, and then it was PS3, and then it was PS4. I want to say there might have been something else. There might have been like a PS3 like release, and then like a PS3 HD remake, and then this one. I could be totally making that up, but I could have sworn there was like more than 3.
Yeah, I think you're well. It seems like the PS3 version was an HD remake in the first place.
Okay.
So whether there was something before that or not, I'm not entirely sure. But
either way,
yeah,
I'm enjoying the game. It has quite the history. It's always been known to be kind of one of those like under the radar games, but it had like a cult following. And I could see that because this is not a game for like a mainstream audience, if you will.
Right.
It's a little bit more obscure in some ways, and it's just not like, it's just not like a AAA, like, very accessible title, even though it's like very simplistic with the controls and the premise. It's just, I just don't think it's going to appeal to the masses.
I picked up a copy of The Last Guardian, which same devs as Shadow of the Colossus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
and I never got an opportunity to spend as much time with it as I wanted to, but it definitely had this feeling of something very special, and I kind of get that vibe from everything that I've seen for Shadow of the Colossus as well too. I've always wanted to check it out. It was on sale a couple weeks ago for a pretty good price, and I decided to hold off on it because my back catalog is just absurd right now.
Yeah.
So I got some other things that I'm working on getting through first, and then maybe I'll try to hunt this one down because I do want to play it.
Yeah.
So
I'm hoping to kind of stick to my resolution of playing and beating games this year, and I'm hoping that I can get this one beat in maybe like another week, maybe a couple weeks, but I'm going to stick with it and try to get back to Bayonetta 2 after.
Nice. It sounds like you have a game plan. I think that's the most important thing when you're trying to, get these check marks, on your list here.
For sure.
What
about you?
I haven't been sticking to my game plan at all.
Well, that's expected.
So I was intending on beating Horizon before the new year. That didn't happen. I was intending on playing Horizon immediately after the new year. That didn't happen. Instead, Xbox Live put out a indie game as one of their games with gold that has been a must-play on my list for quite some time. And I dropped everything and I started playing Celeste. And let me tell you, man, it's fucking great.
So please tell me about it, because I really know nothing about this game. I only know about the name, and that's it.
So the name comes from a mountain in the game, and your main character is a little girl named Madeline, and her goal is to climb Celeste Mountain, and she does so through a series of kind of difficult jumping puzzles and platforming.
Okay.
Platforming games tend to be the bane of my existence. If you ever watch me play Mario, any of them, like it's laughable. And this is one of those games that's incredibly difficult, but it's one of those games that encourages you to fail so that you can continue to try and succeed. You're not penalized for dying. You're starting off on one screen, like the first, so everything's divided up into chapters, and you start on one screen and you have to jump your way, through a series of platforms or, whatever the scene requires to get to the other side, whether it's up or to the right or to the left or, whatever direction. And then once you've gotten through that screen, essentially you've hit a checkpoint, and then you move on to the next screen, and it's all seamless. Like you're just going through the levels. So when you die, and you will die a lot, on stage 3, I died 520 something times, I think.
Jesus.
Yeah. It's one of those types of games. They, when you die, there's no fanfare, there's no game over screen. You're just, boom, back to the spot where you start in that screen.
Okay.
So this is clearly part of the routine. You're supposed to fail. And you're not supposed to feel bad about it. It's like, okay, what did I do wrong? Let's fix it. And they don't waste your time. They don't fuck around. It's like, you're dead, you're alive again, let's go. Mm-hmm. And that really encourages you to kind of keep going. The controls are very tight in the game. They're very responsive. Your character can jump and climb, and then there's kind of like this dash motion, which you can do in the air as well, too. You can only do it once, and they have like a bit of a stamina bar as well, too. So like if you dash and then you like try to climb up a wall, you could get weak, and then you won't be able to hold on to the wall anymore.
Okay.
So it kind of makes you plan out where you're jumping, where you're just free falling, where you're grabbing onto a wall and things like that. And then you have these objects throughout the each screen that can kind of like rejuvenate your life. Uh-huh. So it becomes a strategy where you're trying to get from one side of the screen to the other. Maybe you can't make the jump because there's no platform for you to land on, but you can hit those recharge icons. So you might jump, dash, hit a recharge, dash, hit another recharge, dash, hit a third recharge, and land on the other side.
Huh.
So it's kind of like I'm trying to think. You ever play N+?
No.
No, it's like this stick figure jumper puzzler kind of thing. It reminds me of that in some ways. It reminds me of Super Meat Boy in some ways. There's a lot going on. The music is gorgeous. Absolutely just stunning piano work mixed with chiptunes kind of thing.
Okay.
It's very somber, and the game kind of deals with some pretty heavy stuff. You have this girl Madeline who she has some depression issues she's dealing with. She gets panic attacks, and she's trying to prove to herself that she can climb this mountain by herself because it's something that she just needs to do, and she's not going to let anybody stop her from doing it.
I like this premise already.
It's tremendous, and it's handled with the utmost class and care. Like there's this one character who's trying to talk her out of going up to things. She's like, no, I'm climbing this mountain. This is something I have to do. She's constantly trying to be like this good person. There's one character in one of the stages who is like really misguided, and like he's kind of creepy, and everybody's telling her, just leave this guy alone, get the hell out of here, he's nuts. But she tries to help him. She tries to help him because she's a good person, but she's also trying to stay focused on her mission to climb the mountain. And things kind of go awry, and she ends up having to run away from this person. But, at the end of the day, like, she's staying true to her character, staying true to herself, and trying to just succeed in this mission. Climbing the mountain is everything to her.
I feel sold on this, man. Like, not to interject, but like I'm really invested in the premise.
It's I'm only on the 4th chapter, and I have a long way to. I think there's 8 chapters total. It's the kind of game that, like, eventually you might just find yourself hitting a wall, like you just can't get past a certain section, and you save the game, you put it down, come back the next day, and then all of a sudden you just fly right through it.
Yeah, it's like Dark Souls.
Yeah. So they don't really punish you for failure, and I think that's really the key for this to work, because the story is great. I really like the graphics and everything, but if the gameplay punished you, I don't think it would work, because these types of games are just too difficult,
Yeah.
And like, I'm the kind of guy who, like, if a game is too difficult, fuck it, I don't have time for this.
Right.
But I don't feel like it feels that way at all. Like I want to succeed. I want to get past this thing because I want to see what's next. And each stage has like its own like thing to it. Each stage has its own flair. Maybe there's sections that you can't get to until you unlock a certain thing, or maybe there's sections where the floor can't be walked on, or the stage that I'm in right now, there's sections where I'm dealing with wind that physically moves my character backwards. So you're navigating these puzzles in different ways and dealing with different elements to keep everything kind of fresh. And then on top of it all, you have these collectibles sprinkled throughout the game, and the main one is they call strawberries. And they tell you at the beginning of the game, right off the bat, these strawberries do absolutely nothing. They're like, if you want to get them, you can get them. If you don't want to get them, don't bother. They're not going to make your character more powerful. They're not going to do anything. It's only for bragging rights. And they're hidden everywhere. So, like, a lot of times you'll see them, they're very obvious, right? It's right there on the other side of the screen. How do I get that strawberry? And you can ignore it. You know, there's nothing that says you have to.
Uh-huh.
But, I don't know, like, for me, like, I like to try to get as many of them as I can. And then there's some. Yeah, just because, you know, it's
like the completionist in you.
That's part of it. And the other thing is like it's challenging to get to those things, but it also kind of makes you think outside the box because you start really putting together this puzzle of how do I achieve this and still not die. Mm-hmm. You know? And the strawberries don't like you, even though you maybe have caught it, unless you're on like solid ground where the strawberry feels quote safe, you don't unlock it. You know, it sounds weird, but that's the term they use. Like the strawberry's not going to come to you unless it feels safe. So it's kind of weird. And then on top of all that, they also have crystal hearts, which are just another collectible. They don't really do anything fancy as far as I'm aware. And then each stage has its own cassette tape, which unlocks a B-side of the level, which brings in like a remix of the level and a remix of the music for the level as well, too. And my understanding is there's also a C-side as well. So there's like a lot of replay value in this game, even though it's only 8 chapters. You know, you can go back and just continually play, try to get all the strawberries, or try to get all the, try to beat the B-sides, try to get to the C, whatever. There's a lot going on here.
Okay, so I have an episode title. How safe are the strawberries? Done.
I like it.
Done.
How safe are the strawberries? Or the strawberries feel safe.
Yes, I like that one better. Okay. So how can we play this game?
Well, it is available on a number of platforms. I'm playing it on the Xbox One. It is part of their Games with Gold right now. It is free, so if you have a subscription to Xbox Live, you can download this game and experience it right now. It is on PC. It is on Switch, which is where I heard about it for the first time.
Perfect.
I'm a big fan of the guys over at Stone Age Gamer. They have a weekly podcast, and Chris is a massive fan of this game. If I'm not mistaken, on his Game of the Year awards, he gave this number 1.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a bold ranking.
I know it was in the top 3. I think it might have been number 1. So, and they play a lot of games, those guys.
And when did this game come out? I'm sorry if you mentioned this already.
I think it came out in January last year. It's a 2018 release.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find out.
Yeah, let's Google it.
And it's a small team that works on it too. A guy by the name of Matt Thorson. Matt Makes Games is a company. Yeah, it came out January 2018.
That's cool. That seems to be like a new trend now, like smaller teams on some of these indie games.
Yeah. This is the same guy who did Towerfall, which was like the only original game that came out on the Ouya.
Ooh, yeah, that's a topic for another episode. I really need to we need to hash that one out.
Yeah. But I can't recommend this enough. I absolutely think it's worth your time. It is available on PlayStation 4 as well. So basically everything. But yeah, this is perfect for the Switch because it's the type of game that you get into bed with it and you just like, all right, I'm going to play one level or one screen, and you get through that screen. The next thing you know, you've done 4 more screens and you're like, all right, I really got to go to bed now. Pause the game, save and quit, put it away. And you just
bloodshot eyes, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly. But it lends itself to having those short game bursts.
Yeah.
So that's what I think is really appealing.
Which is key for us, like us adults.
Yeah. I mean, I could sit down and put an hour into it and not feel like I'm missing like part of a story or anything like that. The story, It's not very deep, but it's very effective.
That's good. I am, like I said, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. Let me know if you end up checking it out. I'd like to hear what you think.
Yeah, I think after the show, I'll probably watch like a couple videos or something of that nature.
Yeah, can't recommend it enough. So
that's awesome, man. So that's like your main game at the moment.
Yeah. I'm pretty focused on trying to beat this. I don't expect to get 100% of the strawberries. I'd like to try to get the B-sides, but as far as I'm concerned, if I can just beat all 8 chapters, that's good enough for me, and then I'll work on going back on my own time. But this is the type of game, even though I got it for free on the Xbox, like if I get my hands on the Switch, I might buy this on the Switch.
Yeah.
It feels like that's where it needs to be.
So how many more coins do you have to put in your piggy bank before we can get a Switch for you?
About halfway there.
Okay, so you gave it a good shake today?
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, I'm saving up my Best Buy points, man.
Oh, there we go. So you're pulling a Vic.
I'm pulling a Vic. If I can make it so that I pay absolutely nothing for the damn thing, that's a good day. But I'm hoping to at least get away with only maybe spend about $100 out of pocket.
Yeah, if you plan on paying nothing, I would suggest like maybe a coffee or like a lunch with Vic, because he's going to have to reveal some secrets on how that's going to happen.
That's crazy Indian secrets.
Yeah, to this day, once we do a part 2, like maybe I'll pick his brain a little bit more on how he kind of swings that, because I still don't fucking understand it.
Just, every time you cash in those $5 gift cards, you're setting yourself back to zero again, man. You got to bank them. Yeah,
I guess so. But to bank them, you have to spend more, though. That's the thing.
Well, so we're going way off track here, but
we are. I'm nervous about this, but fuck it, do it. Go off track, Drew.
I'm going off track. So I carry 0 balance on that card, on my Best Buy card. Every single thing I buy, I pay for with the Best Buy card, and it all counts to that minimum total. So I need to, before I can bank. So groceries, Best Buy card. Dinner, Best Buy card. Coffee, Best Buy card. And at the end of the month, I pay it off at 0. And then they give you points, and it's percentage on what you spend. So 1% on points, 2%, depending on where you're buying it. You get the most points for buying at the store itself.
Yeah.
So as long as you can, control your spending so that you're not spending outside of your means, the card is basically paying you. You're making money on that card because I'm not carrying a balance. I'm not getting charged an interest rate.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually have the credit card as well, and I actually used it today. But I just I don't know if it's linked to like the point system. So maybe I need to look into that.
It is. If it says their name on it, it's linked. So I'll sit down with you. We'll talk about it more.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Sounds like a plan, man. So you've been playing more than just Shadow.
Yes, I actually just completed a game called Gris, which we have both mentioned before. I think on a couple different episodes.
I'm very eager to hear this. What you think?
Yeah, it's oh my gosh. This is a game that you really have to kind of sit down and kind of take it all in when you've completed it, because it's such a profound experience when you're done. You kind of just sit there and you're thinking, okay, how do I even digest, this game? And I think that, in terms of what this game is about, you play as a young girl who seems to have lost her voice and or singing voice, because the way that the game opens up, it kind of, shows this little animation of her not being able to speak or sing.
Okay.
So immediately I'm thinking, okay, was she a singer, or has she just lost her voice? Does she enjoy singing sometimes? They don't really give you a lot of info. There's no narrative. Right. There's no subtitles. There's no, storyline that's kind of explained to you. It's just visuals that you have to kind of decipher on your own. Right. And, make the most of it. So I guess it's kind of like Journey in that sense, where there's no narrative or no, direct storyline. You just kind of have to, put your own twist on it, or your own sort of opinion or thought process, whatever it may be. You have to kind of make up your own premise. And I think with this game, it kind of touches on that. You sort of make your own premise, but at the same time, you can kind of see that this is a game where it seems like you've lost your mother. Okay. And you begin this journey through what seems to be different worlds almost. and each time you complete a stage or a level, you unlock a new color that paints the theme of the next stage.
Ooh.
So it's kind of like a painting, where each stage is kind of like a color theme. And when you're done with that one stage, you unlock the next theme and or color for the following stage. So it's really unique, and I think there's a lot of nods to Journey and even games like the Swapper in terms of like sound effects and kind of the way that the game starts, and even the way that Gris, which I'm assuming is her name, the way that she looks is a very similar depiction as the character that you play in Journey. These kind of like stick legs and sort of this robe or sort of like, you know, triangular dress that you wear in the game. It's very reminiscent of Journey.
Okay.
So I think they had mentioned in like a review or a video that they actually did, you know, give some nods to those games, and they kind of pulled some ideas from them. And rightfully so, because Journey and some of those other games like the Swapper and, you know, some of the original sort of indie games, like they set the tone for the way that indie games are now.
Right.
And you basically face challenges, you face your fears of death and loss, and at the same time you're experiencing like true beauty in this world of watercolors and this sort of painting that's coming to life. So in some ways, I guess they kind of give a nod to Child of Light as well, which we've also mentioned that we want to play that game, or I need to play it, and we need to kind of discuss it.
Yeah, I want to spend some more time with that again.
Yeah, and it's just a really, truly remarkable, memorable, powerful, joyous, heartbreaking experience that defines, or more importantly, sets a new standard for indie games. And even though they're kind of, you know, they have those nods to the other games like I had mentioned before, I still feel like it's setting kind of a higher standard with the way that the art direction is and the music and the theme and the sort of premise of this game, that you're dealing with what seems to be the loss of your mother. And you are that mother's child or daughter, if you will, and you're basically traversing this world of different colors and different sort of themes to kind of understand and deal with the heartbreak of losing somebody as close as your parent. And it's really something, like I said, is really something special. And in terms of gameplay, it's simple. There's very few controls. There's unlockable abilities. You can't die or fail. And there's no bosses or true, like, real enemies. So you face some enemies and what seems to be like I guess like a mini boss, but there's no health bar. There's no, you know, like HUD. It's just you're experiencing something that's just on screen, and you're facing some kind of trials and tribulations of these worlds that you're kind of experiencing. And I think that's what makes it, you know, very unique, is that you can kind of learn abilities like jumping higher, turn into a block, turn into like a stingray basically in water stages, so you can kind of, you know, learn how to swim in this sort of like stingray approach. It's incredibly unique, man.
How are those abilities like unlocked? Is there like some sort of an experience like tree, or is it based on the stage you're in, or?
It's based on the stage. So when you mention like tree, like all of those kind of elements that you see in a lot of games like Skyrim and The Witcher and you know, AAA titles, all of those things are completely not present, which is what I really enjoyed about this game. It's just kind of based on, you know, you might experience like this area where you're trying to jump from one place to another and you can't quite reach it. And then maybe in the next stage, you unlock this ability to jump higher. So it's all based on the stage that you're in, the sort of stage that you're in, like in terms of the game and the story and what you need to kind of traverse to next. And those kind of unlockable abilities just kind of come naturally, and they come at the right time. Interesting. In terms of the soundtrack, it's very fitting. It's very heartbreaking and cheerful and ethereal and haunting, and it almost seems like it's in tune with what you're doing as well. So take Rock Band or Guitar Hero, which are kind of weird examples, but they're very relevant in this case. So if you've played those games before, when you're doing well, the crowd cheers. When you're not doing well, the crowd boos and you feel like a sack of shit.
Yeah.
So this game, from what I can interpret, it seems like when you're kind of, reaching like a higher stage in the level, it seems like the music kind of increases in volume and thematics, and it really kind of ties in with what you're doing. And I think that that was my biggest takeaway in terms of the soundtrack. It's like I said, it's beautiful. It's haunting at times and kind of sad. There's some low moments and there's some high moments, and it all depends on what you're actually doing in the game.
That sounds really moving overall.
Yeah. I mean, and when you mention overall, like I would say, like the overall consensus of this game is this is a game about loss and perhaps the anxiety and depression that comes with the coping process. And I feel like I was able to relate exclusively due to coping with the loss of my father due to cancer many years ago. And it's a dark path that I feel like as a human, you kind of you have to endure it when it's a loved one that passes. And this game allows you to experience every phase of loss, whether it's the depression, the fears, the anxiety, the sadness, and the joy that was once a part of you. And you're robbed of joy when someone dies in your family or someone that's close to you.
Right.
And there's an analysis that sort of takes place here with Gris, and Gris is that analysis. It's the only difference is that it's painted in watercolor.
Very interesting way of kind of translating that. Especially, you said there was no dialogue in the game either, right?
No dialogue whatsoever.
Nothing on screen. It's all just told through the colors and the animation. And
exactly. And the emotions that kind of come with the music and the visuals that are tied in with that. It's it's just thinking about it just kind of gives me chills, because it's one of those experiences that is very similar and reminiscent of Journey, but way more profound this time. And even if you haven't dealt with loss or death or anxiety or depression, there are some moments in this game that kind of put you into that and make you realize what it might be like to suffer from one of those things.
Right.
So I couldn't give it, a higher score than what I give it, which I believe is like on a scale from 1 to 10, it's an absolute 10.
Yeah. Wow. That's high praise.
Yeah, it is a high praise. Coming from me, like I have really high standards when it comes to games in general, especially indie games, and this one has definitely made my top 5 for sure.
Wow.
So I can't wait for you to play it, and if, for all the people listening to this episode, check this game out. It's $16.99, I believe, still. It's for the Switch, it's for PC, and hopefully it kind of hits all platforms at some point this year.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see it on some more platforms. I feel like the Switch has kind of turned into like this lovely indie machine, which is great, but at the same token too, I feel like Xbox and PlayStation are kind of missing out on a few things too, and especially the PlayStation. I feel like this game would really be at home on that.
It would, and if they could incorporate the speaker that's in the controller somehow, then I think that would make it, even more special.
About how long did it take you to beat the game?
That's a great question. I didn't keep track of the time. I feel like I played it over the course of like just under a week.
Okay.
And I think in terms of like actually like picking up and playing it, like I probably only like played it about 3 or 4 times, like 3 or 4 sessions. But it felt short, but it also... It didn't feel short in the sense of, as though like this game is too short. It was just the right kind of length for, the experience that you have in this game. And I think that was more than enough. And it's not a game that, you would want to drag on. And I think that in terms of the length, it was perfect.
Yeah. I mean, that's something like this where it's heavy. You don't want to spend too much time with it if you... Not that the gameplay itself is dragging you down or anything, but, the subject matter can be kind of heavy.
Yeah, and overall, it's a fun and simple experience. It's like basically a puzzle platformer at the end of the day. It's just done in a very unique way in terms of the subject matter.
Right.
But yeah, that's my review, man. And like I had mentioned before, I think I might start doing some actual written reviews, and it's something that you and I have discussed for the future of the show. And
yeah,
I think it could be something that we could get into.
Yeah. willscrazyblog.wdgrpodcast.com/
That's it.
Sexy leg time.
With perfectly timed strawberry collecting skills.
Man, I definitely want to check this game out. The moment I saw it, I was like, I have to play this.
Yeah, and what's cool about it, or kind of mysterious, is like when you watch a trailer or you watch gameplay, it really does a good job at not revealing what this game is about. I mean,
I love that.
Granted, if you watch some in-depth reviews, of course they're going to say that this is a game about loss, and it seems to be about the loss of her mother. But I was reading some comments on some of the videos on Gris, and there were some really interesting interpretations and analysis, viewpoints from other players.
Right.
And I took a lot away from that, because I think that this is a game like Journey, where some people might say, okay, this is about, a journey of life or whatever. But I like the fact that it allows you to have your own perception of what this game is about, even though some people are like, oh, well, it clearly states that it's about the loss of her mother. It's like, okay, I get that, but if I want to interpret it as something else, then I have the choice to do that, and this game allows you to do that.
Let's go down this rabbit hole for a second, because I feel like as games become accepted as a true art form, and we get more of these types of things happening in video games, that interpretation really does come into play, where you're not playing through a story that has a specific path to it. You're not playing through something that's scripted like Call of Duty, where it's the terrorists are trying to take over the world or blah, blah, blah. You're playing through something which is artistic in a way that it leaves open to interpretation what the original what the designer, what the programmer, what the coder, the writer, what they all meant, what they were thinking of when they were coming up with this game. It's like watching an art film versus Transformers.
Right.
And
I think that's just it, is yes, if you spoke to the devs, or if you tweeted them and said, hey, what is this game about? They might say the same kind of thing, it's about loss, it's about the loss of your mother. But at the same time, they might even tweet back and say, you know what? That's the main premise, but at the same time, we've left it open,
right?
And we've left some themes and sort of thematics in this game and subject matter that can be interpreted differently, and it all depends on the viewer or the player,
right?
In terms of what they actually experience and what they take away from it.
Yeah, I think that's important for people to recognize too. It's not everything needs to be, spelled out for you explicitly. I know personally, I have trouble identifying what the hidden meaning is between behind art or poetry or a book. I've always been the kind of guy who's face value, what is this? And then I could kind of take away from it my own interpretation once I know what the artistic statement was.
Right.
But if I don't know what the artistic statement was in the beginning, I'm just going to assume, oh, this is just a game about pretty colors.
Right. And that's just it. Is for example, one of the first things I did when I beat the game is, I believe I told you, and then I immediately jumped on the internet.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of okay, so meaning behind Gris. That was I think one of the first things I Googled or searched on YouTube. And it's so cool to kind of read the comments of other YouTubers and other people on, game articles on what they thought about the game and their interpretation. And then sometimes you can read something that really resonates with your interpretation. You're like, wow, and it becomes this kind of almost like this addiction, or this thing that you just can't wait to do. And that's what I love about some of these obscure, mysterious indie games that don't paint that premise or the plot so clearly. It becomes this sort of exciting mission where you just want to play the game, come up with your own theory, and then research other people's, theories as well.
Right. Oh man, I need a Switch. I just checked my balance of points today too. While we were talking about this thing
For Best Buy?
Yeah, it's I still got a ways to go.
Like I said, man, just sell the fucking oven.
I don't know if that's gonna work.
I mean, how often do you use it?
Today?
For what?
Breakfast?
What did you make in the oven for breakfast, or did you make it on the stovetop?
Well, it's a stovetop / oven. It's not like a range, It's all in one. So I used the stovetop, but we made I don't know. We baked something over the weekend. We're gonna make a pot roast on Saturday or Sunday.
Okay, so here's what you do: get a pressure cooker, and then get one of those like flat top like griddles, or like one of those like flat top cookers that kind of replaces like a range, and then call up Lyle, the guy that's going to buy that oven.
Okay, Lyle.
Make sure he's got the David sunflower seeds on deck.
I'll fax him. Let me fax him.
Fax him, and make sure that Nikki's not home, and make sure he comes with the truck so he can load it up in the truck.
Oh my God.
Lyle.
And you know what? When I run out of money and I need to buy a Pro controller, I'll just sell all that stuff that I just bought, and I'll just cook a can of beans out in the fire and back.
Exactly. And eat them with a stick.
Eat them with a stick. Eating beans with a stick.
Yeah. Under a bridge, under a highway bridge. just
fucking
imagine
wild.
Yourself. Yeah. You're like naked, like in a trench coat, eating like baked beans, like with a fucking like dirty ass twig. You're like, you know what? At least I got a Switch, though. Lyle.
Fucking Lyle.
It would be a guy named Lyle that wants to buy an oven with like a beat-up, rusted-out pickup truck.
If your name is Lyle and you drive a beat-out, rusted pickup truck and you'd like to message the show, please reach out to Will_Gear on Twitter and on Facebook, and do not contact me.
Yeah, send us a fax.
Send us a fax. Oh, my God. So we for the rest of our show, we're just kind of up in the air. We really didn't have a solid game plan. Well,
there was like a couple things that you found.
Yeah. So I mean, we were going to talk about single player games and whether or not they're dying, and I think we just made a case for two that are not. I think the general belief is that single player games are kind of going the wayside to mobile gaming, and there's a website out of the UK called Metro that wrote a whole thing about it, and they're praising games like God of War, Breath of the Wild, Cyberpunk, all these games that are exclusively single player games. And actually, they do talk about some indie stuff too. Inside, Limbo, Braid, Dead Cells, things like that. Into the Breach.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, I tend to agree, but, as a guy who's playing exclusively single-player games these days, there's no shortage.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, because I feel like, back in like 2009, 2010, 11, that kind of era, I feel like a lot of people were still playing like Call of Duty, and like the multiplayer genre was just... To me, it was like at an all-time high.
Yeah, it was.
And I remember that's all I played was, Black Ops, and I remember that was when I was getting Vic, shit for playing like, Super Street Fighter 4 and all these like single-player games, and occasionally like a multiplayer game, but he just wasn't playing the same games that we were. Mm-hmm. And I think that this article that I still haven't read...
Good job, Will.
Yeah, I know. It probably
fucking Lyle.
I know. It probably rings quite true to 2018 and 2019 that a lot of people are kind of going back into that genre of like these experiences versus like playing Call of Duty or PUBG or Fortnite, which are very, very popular games. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, there's still kind of like this general interest, leaning back towards single player games. And I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, at the beginning of the day, I think multiplayer games are kind of like the start of it all, but I think single player games, people want a good story. They want something that they can sit down with and not have to worry about some 12-year-old telling them how they fucked their mother.
Right.
And they just want to sit down and unwind. And I mean, for some people, unwinding is multiplayer. I think if we had the time to talk to Vic a little bit longer last week, he would have gone into his details about why he only plays multiplayer games.
Sure.
And doesn't really bother with the single player. And I think for him, it's about the adrenaline rush. And I'm putting words in his mouth, but this is a conversation we've had a few times.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's openly admitted recently that, like, for him, that's what it's all about now, is he needs that rush. Mm-hmm. And I agree that, like, that rush really is most of the time only kind of capable or attainable from a multiplayer experience like PUBG or, any kind of multiplayer shooter. But at the same time, you can still get it from a single player game.
I would put up, maybe not with him. I think he's a little biased, but if you were to take like some of the most intense PUBG moments and pair them up against some of the most intense moments out of Horizon, like the first time that you're fighting like a big fucking dinosaur,
a mechanical one,
a big mechanical dinosaur, and like these things are massive in this game. Like, I mean, stories and stories tall and wide.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
The sense of scale on that, and when you finally like beat it, holy shit, man, what a rush. Like, I've played that game, gotten that adrenaline rush, had to pause it, put the controller down, and like literally wipe the sweat from my brow.
Yeah.
So that feeling, that rush, it can still exist on the single player side without a doubt.
No, I'm with you on that, man. I'm with you.
I do feel that maybe it's less frequent.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the game.
Well, that's for sure, because like if you think about a movie, like you can't sustain a story on a film where it's only that adrenaline rush. I know there's movies that have tried it, and maybe it's fun in isolated circumstances, but for movies in general to do that, you can't sustain it. There's nothing to it. It's just,
yeah,
you know what I mean. And I think as games become more complex, especially indie games start getting, more into deeper messages and things like that, you need to make those moments count. Because if those moments don't count, then the story doesn't count.
Right.
So.
No, I agree. I think that Vic is someone who often, I wouldn't say struggles, but like he might just need a little bit more experimentation with single player games so he can find something that just kind of resonates, with him. Because I feel like there are games out there that he would really enjoy. He just doesn't, he's very adamant about the games that he plays, and that's totally fine and fair. Mm-hmm. But I think that sometimes he could, open and broaden his, boundaries or horizons rather, and, play something that would be appealing to him that would still kind of create that rush that he's looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
But nevertheless, it's an interesting topic, like I had mentioned before, and I think that I'll definitely have to give that a read.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good article. They kind of go into a little bit more detail about the business side of things as well too, which is always interesting. Mm-hmm. I've always been fascinated by how business decisions affect media.
Sure.
So in a former life, it was how business decisions affected pro wrestling. Mm-hmm. And now it's more on the video game side of things.
Yeah.
But it's just that sort of thing is just always fascinating to me. It's like, how did these decisions impact an industry?
Yeah. No,
it's worth a read. Yeah. Metro.co.uk. Look for single player games aren't dying, they're ruling. I think it's worth your time.
Yeah, it's a good title.
It is. So
it makes you want to read it.
Well, I did. You didn't.
Yeah, well, you get a gold star for today, Drew.
Thanks. Buy me a Switch.
Yeah, and you get one of those Jolly Ranchers that those fucking substitute teachers would keep in like one of those like the little fucking manila envelopes, and it'd be like, all right, who wants a Jolly Rancher? Just because like they knew that they weren't like the real teacher, so that was like their way of like just kind of like sugarcoating things and trying to win the fucking like audience.
Yeah, bribery.
Yeah, here,
Those
take
things...
a fucking green apple Jolly Rancher and shut the fuck up.
Those fucking things get stuck in my teeth all the time, man.
Oh, they're the worst. You got to suck on them. You got to just suck on them and not chew them.
Yeah, but once you get down to the bottom, like, there's nothing left. Why not chew, you know?
I know. It's like just a natural human instinct to just kind of chew it.
It's like my cat's instinct to, like, play with his food. Like, why the fuck does he do that?
What? He doesn't just eat it?
One of them actually plays with it. Like, he'll
like with his paw?
He'll take the dry food out and he'll start batting it around the kitchen, and then he'll eat it. And then he'll go back and get another one. The other one takes the wet food out of his dish, walks into the living room, plops it down on the floor, and eats it in the living room.
Yeah.
So
maybe it's just out of like pure like boredom. He's just like, you know what? I'm not that hungry, so I'm just gonna like pretend like this like cat this like cat food is just like fucking like a soccer ball, I guess, and I'm just gonna like bounce it around the kitchen, disturb my owners, and then eat it.
Yeah. I think so. Anyway, I think that just about does it for us today.
Yeah, I think we're maxed out.
We're maxed out. But hopefully everybody enjoyed our hyper focus on Gris and Celeste. I know these are two games that both of us have had a lot of interest in for quite some time, and I'm glad that we're finally getting around to playing them.
Yeah, like I said before, man, like it feels good to play games, and it feels good to beat them, and I really hope that we can stick with that and stay on pace, because I feel like we're doing quite a decent job considering our ADHD problems and our massive backlogs. Yeah.
I'm proud of what we've done so far as like beating games. So we actually need to discuss what our next game will be. Maybe we'll finally break down and listen to Patrick and his silly suggestion. But,
do this Edith Finch game.
It does look good though. I would just prefer to play on my sofa without having to use a Steam Link or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of where my mind is at. I like playing on the PC, but I prefer to do like strategy games. I like the mouse. I like the keyboard for that. Otherwise, I'd much rather have a controller.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
That makes sense.
But anyway, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you're subscribing if you're just listening to us for the first time. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at WDGRPodcast, at WDGRPodcast. Hit us up on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, Google Play, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. Go over there, subscribe, learn to speak the words that are coming out of my mouth. Drew.
Hooked on phonics.
Oh, man, it's been a long day.
I shouldn't speak, man. I'm like 2 beers deep, and these things are hitting me like a Mack truck.
I could tell your speech is starting to slur.
Oh, yeah.
So subscribe, and please take a moment to leave a review. Any and all feedback is welcome. If you want to shoot us an email, wdgrpodcast@gmail.com. Will, how could somebody find you if they wanted to send you a can of beans and a dirty stick?
It's going to be Will_gear, and you can find me under I-84. There's a bridge right near exit 38. I'll be there with a dirty trench coat with poop stains on it, and I'll have a can of Bush beans, vegetarian, with a twig. And a Switch.
And a Nintendo Switch. And you can follow me at Scion Storm. I will be nowhere near that bridge. I prefer to stay indoors.
I'll be like a rat, like, stay away.
Oh, goodness. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I gotta go. I can't deal with this insanity anymore. Thank you.
Take care, guys.